Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you're watching us from. We're so excited to have you with us here today for Tier Talks as part of Homecoming 2020. On behalf of the Binghamton University Alumni Association, I'd like to welcome you to this very special webinar. My name is Steve Seepersod. I'm an Advancement Communications Manager here at Binghamton University and very pleased to welcome you to this special event during Homecoming. Back in 2014, we started Tier Talks, and Tier stands for Talks that Inspire, Educate, and Resonate. And it was meant to showcase the best of Binghamton University, and realized we had such great minds here and some great intellectual content. And we wanted to offer something to the alumni at large, in addition to the usual social and professional and personal networking opportunities. And Tier Talks debuted at Homecoming 2014 as part of the effort to address lifelong learning and the need for lifelong learning that many alumni have. That need to learn and add to your knowledge base, we know, doesn't end when you graduate from Binghamton University, and you have that need throughout your whole life. And so this initiative was formed to meet that need that we know that you have. So now I'd like to turn it over to the chair of our Lifelong Learning Committee at the Alumni Association, Marilyn Gasca, who will explain a little bit more about Tier Talks, what it's about, what it's meant to do, why it's important to the Alumni Association, and why it's important to you as well.
Thanks, Steve. And just want to say that Tiers is talks that inspire, educate, and resonate. And we have a great group today that from the Harper College that will do just that. And so we're really excited to present this year's Tier Talk. We've had a number of different topics that are on the website, but as the chair of the Lifelong Learning Committee, this is one of our key initiatives we started. Now we're expanding into more efforts, and we hope you enjoy today's speakers. Back to you, Steve.
Marilyn, thank you very much, and we apologize for the technical difficulties. We're unable to make the video happen, but we're very glad that Marilyn could share her perspectives with us in audio form to talk about the Alumni Association's value of Tier Talks and lifelong learning. So we're going to talk about, we're going to hear from faculty members who will be talking about their research with help from something called the Harper College Advocacy Council Faculty Development Endowment. It's a very important initiative in Harper College and Binghamton University, and so it helps to seed some very exciting projects that have the potential to go very far. And to speak on behalf of the Harper College Advocacy Council is Michael Kerner from the class of 1986.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity to say a few words this evening, and really thrilled to be here on this evening's Tier Talk. It's a very exciting event for me and for, I'm sure, the participants. So as you mentioned, this evening, we're going to hear from several of the distinguished members of Harper College faculty. And through that, I think we'll be able to get a really good glimpse of some of the extraordinary level of academics that are taking place on the Binghamton campus. All of the people that will be presenting today have recently received a grant from the Harper College Faculty Research Grant. And some of the funding for those research grants, as you mentioned, do come from an alumni-funded endowment fund called the Harper College Advocacy Council Faculty Development Endowment. And as co-chair of the Harper College Advocacy Council, I've had the pleasure over the last years, along with other members of the council, of being involved in the grant process, reviewing applications and providing the Dean of Harper College with advice on the grants. And it's been an extraordinarily rewarding experience getting to see the great work that is done by the faculty here at Binghamton. And the endowment actually came about really when the Dean of Harper College declared support for faculty research to be a priority at Harper. And over the years, we have funded a wide array of projects, ranging from the creation of devices that can detect lung cancer, to the completion of biographies of key civil rights leaders, to the development of theatrical performances, to the study of childhood health in Tanzania. Many different topics, many different disciplines. Support for faculty research allows the recruitment and retention of outstanding faculty, supports scholarly work, and has a deep impact on the experience of our students. We know from our own personal experience at Binghamton that interaction with faculty is one of the most lasting positive impacts that our students can have on campus. So we're going to see some great examples of that this evening, and I hope you all enjoy the evening. Thanks, Steve.
Michael, thank you very much. And we're about to launch into the heart of our Tier Talks event with the 4 faculty members who are going to be discussing their research, 3 individual Tier Talks that are part of this session. And one of them will be a tandem with 2 professors, and the other will be 2 professors individually. If you have questions that you would like to ask, please go ahead and type those into the chat box. Make clear who it is the question is for, type your question in, and we'll be looking at these during the course of the session. And we'll be, once all of the individual tier talks are done, we will then have time for questions and answers. Although the session was billed as going from 5 to 6 p.m., we're happy to stick around a little bit longer. So if things run a little bit long, and say 10 minutes of 5 minutes of the hour, and then we get into the questions and answers, and we go a little bit over, that's okay. Perfectly happy to stay here as long as necessary to make sure that your questions get answered and you get what you need from this particular tier talk. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and add to the spotlight and introduce our first speaker, Elizabeth Mozer, a theater artist, an associate professor of theater here at Binghamton University. She's been on our faculty since 2012. She is a director, actress, theater maker, and educator specializing in movement. She has been an original cast member of 3 Broadway shows, performed in many TV commercials, off-Broadway and regional theater productions, and has worked as a voiceover artist. In addition, she has taught at world-renowned acting studios in New York City. Since coming here to Binghamton, she has created 2 original plays and is in the process of her 3rd one, and that 3rd play is the focus of her tier talk this evening. Elizabeth, we turn over now to you.
Thank you so much, Steve, and to everyone who's made this event possible. I'm truly grateful, and welcome to all of you out there, our audience tonight. I invite you to take a breath with me, for all of us to take a deep breath together. Let's do that 2 more times. Quieting the nervous system. We'll try it 2 more times. Breathing in, exhaling out, breathing in, and exhaling out. Bringing ourselves to the present moment, feeling whatever it is that we're feeling, a means of dropping in. This is a small example of one of the ways I work, somatically, of the body, the experienced body, the subjective body rather than the objectified body. It's mindfulness of body, becoming aware of sensation as a way into presence, into the present moment, generating a calm alertness, a relaxed readiness, a place to create and work from. By way of this somatic connection, I warm up, rehearse, perform, and generate theatrical content. In other words, create plays. From this embodied place, I begin writing on my feet from a sense of character, giving form to what arises. Practicing somatic approaches increases my self-awareness, enables me to access more of myself and to express more of myself, as in this simple example of taking a deep breath and giving it my full attention. Breathing this luscious air into our lungs, this life-giving oxygen, fueling our cells that's given to us by plants, plants growing in the soil and growing in our waters. Our air, our ability to breathe is significant to the play I'm currently making entitled Natural Causes. The play revolves around issues of deforestation and the people who are putting their bodies on the line to prevent it. It's about activists who are participating in embodied acts of civil disobedience to save the plants, trees, and animals that are so essential to our life, health, to our very existence. The play is based on interviews that I've been conducting around the country with environmental activists, primarily focusing on tree sitters. I also also wanted to start with this simple somatic practice of connecting to one's breath because it's foundational to my creative process. It's a connective thread linking all of my original works. This, along with physical text. All of my plays include a substantial amount of movement, of dance, mime, and distinctive physical character work. The physical text is interwoven with the verbal text and has equal weight in the narrative. Each of my plays focuses on real people, real events, places, and issues, and involves a significant amount of research in combination with the imaginative process. And each of my plays are sourced from interviews that I conduct with individuals that are intimately connected to the subject matter. The first play I made since becoming a faculty member at Binghamton University is titled The Asylum Project. The creative journey began in August 2015 when I took a tour of the now derelict Binghamton State Hospital, formerly known as the New York State Inebriate Asylum, and soon after as the Asylum for the Chronic Insane. During my visit to the asylum, made possible by Binghamton University, I was awakened to the lives that had lived there, worked there, or visited the asylum, this tremendous Gothic building, locally known as the Castle. Their presence was palpable to me as I walked the halls of the asylum. While on tour, my guide shared a story with me, an extraordinary and very moving one, about a woman who had been a patient at the asylum for 70 years. That's 70. I was transfixed by it, and it captured my imagination and my heart. I was inspired to make a theater work centered on this woman and other patients at Binghamton State Hospital. And so I began researching the history of the asylum, as well as other New York State asylums that operated roughly between the years 1880 and 1980, learning about psychiatric practices during this time, and reading personal accounts of individuals who were intimately connected to these hospitals. I sought out local historians, patients, nurses, and relatives of patients, and began talking to them about their experiences, interviewing them. This all led to my creating the Asylum Project, a one-woman show where I play 5 different characters related to the asylum. I performed the Asylum Project in Binghamton, throughout New York State, in Colorado, Montreal, and New York City. And in the fall of 2019, I performed the Asylum Project at the International United Solo Theater Festival in New York City, where it received the Best Drama Award. In late 2017 and early 2018, I turned my attention to creating a new play, one that grew out of the Asylum Project, entitled Castle on the Hill. This play was not a solo show. It was a cast of 12 actors, student actors. I directed the play and it had its premiere here at Binghamton University. Castle on the Hill was filled with newly created movement text with characters devised from recent research and interviews, along with characters that I had discovered during my initial research for the Asylum Project. It was a profound experience for me to perform the solo play, The Asylum Project, and for the student company to perform Castle on the Hill for the Binghamton community. We had numerous post-performance talkbacks where audiences shared their moving responses. Going forward from these experiences, I've begun creating my third play, Natural Causes, for which I received a Harper College faculty research grant, for which I am very grateful. During the summer of 2019, I traveled to the West Coast for a month, meeting with environmental activists, interviewing them, listening to them as they gave voice to the trees, rivers, earth, air, and wildlife. I met with tree sitters, protesters, often women, who risk their lives by living in trees for extended periods of time, defying police and energy corporations. The tree sitters stay on small platforms, their temporary homes, high in the trees, in order to prevent the trees from being cut down. I met with people fighting on the front lines of environmental destruction. I went to an action camp in a redwood forest where activists were planning their next direct action of civil disobedience against a logging company. I met with tree sitters, Red and Minor Terry in Virginia, and Elise and Ellen Gerhardt in Pennsylvania, both mother and daughter teams fighting fracked gas pipelines going through their properties. I interviewed a tree sitter named Rook via text while they were tree sitting in California. I interviewed longtime forest defenders, the Lost Coast League, elders who have been leading a movement against logging in Northern California for decades. I met with 2 of the 5 valve turners, activists who stopped the flow of tar sands oil coming into the United States from Canada. Many of the people I talked to have been arrested or are awaiting trial or have served time in jail for their actions. I also visited the places, the rivers and trees that these activists are aiming to protect. Redwood trees, sequoias, and Douglas firs, as well as bristlecone pine trees, among the longest lived life forms on Earth, thousands of years old. I visited the Metolius River in Oregon, the Mattole River in California, and the largest old growth rainforest in Washington. Part of my investigation when interviewing these environmental activists was a somatic one. What is it like physically to endure the elements of nature day after day living in a tree? What is it like to be alone for extended periods of time? What is it like to be so intimate with nature? I wanted to learn how these things affected them physically, somatically. I also wanted to learn what compelled these individuals to take these personal risks. As they shared with me, these embodied acts of civil disobedience can take tremendous toll on their personal lives, on their economic well-being, and on their health, physical, emotional, and mental. Often the response I received was, I can't see myself doing anything other than this. How can I sit by and let this destruction happen? How can I not raise my voice? How can I not put my body on the line? If not me, then who? Environmental activists often feel alone with their despair, with their grief about the condition of the planet. But when engaging in direct actions, they experience community with fellow activists who are as committed and as passionate as they are. Then they don't feel so alone. Their actions and connection to the other activists cultivates hope. The prospect of not acting filled them with more dread than the risk of arrest or other personal harm. I've been reading lately how the humanities, how the humanities can play a part in helping people understand the climate crisis. That the humanities can do things that the scientific data cannot do. And that is through story. And I'm hoping that my story, a Valentine of sorts, can help my audiences reconnect, re-engage with our threatened environment, to fall in love with trees. We protect, we save what we love. And perhaps by hearing from the activists, everyday people like us who are putting their bodies on the line to protect our earth from further destruction, we'll also be encouraged to act. What kind of stories can help us experience connection and consider different ways of being together? What does creative problem solving look like? Perhaps if we're willing to feel the grief and breathe. Allow our hearts to be broken open in catharsis and breathe. Being with the what is and imagining the what if. I think theater has a part to play in all of this, and I look forward to playing my part. I now would like to share some photos with you. And I will do that now. All right, so this is a promo for the Asylum Project. And it's a picture of Binghamton State Hospital. This is a promotional, a promo card for the performance I did in New York City at the United Solo Theater Festival of the Asylum Project. Here I am with others on tour at the Binghamton State Hospital. I was able to take students with me on one of the tours. I visited the asylum 3 times. And so it was really wonderful to be able to share my work and my research with my students. Here are students, faculty, and staff who came to see me perform the Asylum Project in Ithaca at the Cherry Arts Theater. These are some production photos from the Asylum Project. This is during a rehearsal. Part of my somatic work in developing character is really dropping into specific systems, the nervous system, the digestive system, the fluid system, the circulatory system, as a means of developing distinctive physical differences between characters, because in the play I transformed very quickly from one character to the other. So I layered significant somatic experiences into each character. So the not only could I experience the transformation, but that the audience could distinguish one character from the other. This is me in New York City with my team, and they are all alums of Binghamton University, except for my husband. And we're outside the theater, and I often employ alums as sound designers, lighting designers, stage managers, creative assistants. This is a rehearsal photo in New York City. This is the cast of Castle on the Hill with a visitor and some of our backstage crew. These are production photos from Castle on the Hill. This is Red Terry, one of the environmental activists who lived in a tree for a month on our own property, fighting a gas line that they want to put in on our property and to cut down her trees. These are forest defenders in California. This is me with the tree Luna that Julia Butterfly Hill lived in for 2 years. These are tree sits high up in the trees of an active tree sit in Elliston, Virginia, called Yellowfinch. A sign telling Mountain Valley Pipeline what to do. Here's a tree sitter trying to encourage others to fight. A sign as you approach the Yellowfinch tree sit. People standing with Red Terry as she did her tree sit. Here is an upward looking photograph of a platform for a tree sitter. Here's me with a sequoia tree, the sequoia roots, brissicone pine, redwood trees, Douglas fir trees, clear cut for your enjoyment, and for your future thoughts. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me this evening.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for sharing with us all of the cool projects that you're engaged in right now. And it was really interesting to have you take us into your creative process, and felt good to take a couple of breaths at the beginning to just kind of plug in and enjoy and to be in the moment, something that's very, very tough to do when things are always so fast moving. So thank you again. And again, if you have questions for Elizabeth, please go ahead and type those into the chat, and we will take these up once all of the individual tier talks are done. So now we will go on to bring in our next two speakers. Oops. I took myself out of the shot, and I didn't want to do that. Okay. Well, we'll start screen sharing. That's okay, because Timothy is getting his presentation ready. So this next portion of the tier talk is going to be delivered by Timothy Desmet and Alex Nicholen. Timothy is a research assistant professor of geological sciences and environmental studies here at Binghamton, also the director of the Geophysics and Remote Sensing Laboratory and leader of the Geospatial Remote Sensing Environmental Visualization with Drones Research. And he's involved with the first year research immersion program here at Binghamton University. Among his areas of expertise, aerial remote sensing and near surface applied geophysics. So Tim, take it away.
Hi there. I wish we were in person, you know, like everyone else, but we're not. But let's pretend for a second that we are. If we were, I would start off and I would try to do that cute thing where I hook and engage the audience early by asking an active question where you have to participate by a show of hands, okay? So what I'm gonna ask is, how many of you, and you guys might actually be able to throw this in the chat if you have or not, how many of you have read Howl by Allen Ginsberg? Obviously I have, since there's a quote up here by it. For those of you who haven't, you're about to hear the beginning of the poem, and probably the most famous lines of everything that Allen Ginsberg has ever written. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the streets, who poverty and tatters passed through the universities, among the scholars who were expelled from the academies. Think about that. Passed through the universities, who were expelled from the academies. Now, obviously, Ginsberg here, writing in 1956, is poetically articulating the underlying angst of a generation suppressed, frustrated by conformity to American cultural norms that stifled freedom of expression, freedom of artistic innovation. But when I read Allen Ginsberg's lines, you know, I'm always thinking about my own personal research. So this poem makes me think of the STEM retention crisis. So I think that our best minds are passing through the academies, as Ginsberg says. I don't know if you knew this, and again, if you're in person, I would force you to actively participate in every slide so that you're paying attention. Did you know that 40% of college students who enter college as STEM majors earn a STEM degree in 6 years? Let me say that again. This is a shocking fact. Less than 40% of students who enter undergraduate intending to graduate with a STEM degree do so within 6 years, okay? This is a staggering and unacceptable outcome. We are failing our students. In the geosciences in particular, my field, the numbers are dire. The United States is forecast to have a workforce deficit of 130,000 geoscientists by 2030, largely because the STEM science are failing to retain our best minds, as Ginsburg would say. I happen to think that this is because they're bored. It's not because they're not smart. It's not because they're not trying. They're bored. They're taking the same intellectually unengaging, the same, intellectually non-stimulating coursework for the first few semesters that Allen Ginsberg's peers were taking in 1956, okay? They're pretending like the internet doesn't exist and that you have to rotely memorize things like equations. This isn't, this isn't the Apollo days. You're not gonna have trouble getting back to the Earth if you can't memorize a calculus equation. The internet's everywhere, okay? Modern American academia, however, is trapped in this stagnant, this antiquated student training model, okay? It's for a workforce of the long gone industrial past. It's for a workforce of the Rust Belt. Those jobs aren't coming back, okay? Facts are memorized, repetitive skills are taught and mastered, pipetting or something like that, that's gonna give you carpal tunnel, right? While deep critical thinking skills, conceptual thinking, reasoning, cognitive flexibility, the ability to generalize and to think and understand scientifically, those are an afterthought. In order for us to meet the workforce demands of the modern knowledge economy, we have to give students the conceptual tools first, and then we can move on to the technical skills later, once they have the critical and analytical thinking skills to actually go on and solve problems. So, here at Binghamton, we know that there's a problem. We know that there's a retention crisis. We know that less than 40% of students who enter college as STEM majors earn a STEM degree in 6th year. We have the diagnosis. The data's there. But how do we fix this? What's the cure? Well, it turns out, the cure is actually an acronym for the word CURE, course-based undergraduate research experiences, the acronym CURE. So remember that, cures, okay? So at Binghamton, we're part of a change towards active education. Away with that old, stagnant, you listen to me while I drone on. And that's supposed to be a funny pun too, because as you can see, my student, Will Frazier here flying a drone, most of my research is UAV-based remote sensing with drones. Instead, what we're doing here is we are creating an active learning environment for our students. And so in order to do that, we've introduced the first-year research immersion program. And as was said before by Steve, I'm a research assistant professor with that program and I direct the lab. So what we're doing is we are actively engaging students and making original discoveries. Original discoveries, that's the key. They're not doing a chemistry lab with titration that's been done for 100 years. They're making original discoveries, and that makes all the difference. Now, with my students, I tend to think in terms of the hedgehog and the fox. Isaiah Berlin's kind of famous, I don't know if you guys can see this, famous essay, when thinking about the difference between the modern knowledge economy and the long gone industrial economy, okay? Being a hedgehog was okay back in the old industrial days when you really had to have repetitive skills, but it's not enough now. The world's different. It's big, there's too much, right? Difficult problems require interdisciplinary skills now, okay? And they require a lot of soft skills, okay? They require us to be general, all-purpose tools, okay? Like pocket knives, not like rock hammers. I had to throw that in there for geology. So in terms of my students, I kind of emphasize the 4 C's. Communication skills, oral and written. When we talk to people in Fortune 500 companies, what's the thing they want the most? Communication skills. That's the base of the pyramid. What do they want next? They want teamwork skills, collaboration. So second C, soft teamwork skills. They want critical thinking, so analytical problem-solving skills, and they want creativity. And the only way that you can be creative is if you expose yourself to the world and if you actually go in and take everything in, okay? So I try to expose my students to as many different types of ways of problem solving and thinking and interdisciplinary logic as I possibly can. Next slide. Okay, so as for me, I am an archaeologist by training. So you can see on the left here, this is a big old hexacopter drone taking off on Easter Island, Rapa Nui. This GIF is courtesy of Carl Lippo, the Associate Dean for Research and Programs here at Binghamton. So they wrote a little a little article in the fall 2019 magazine that I'm featured in. Got research, get a drone. Drones expand boundaries for Binghamton scientists. More or less, the moral of the story is that everyone should be doing research with these things. They're the future in terms of the physical sciences. Also, guess what? If you fly drones with your students, you keep them engaged. They have a really fun time. It's a good thing. So, what are we doing with our students? Research, like I said, course-based undergraduate research experiences. So what we have is a forensics controlled test site where we use remote sensing to find clandestine graves, which is useful because there's 16,000 missing person cases in the US every year, and there's tons of mass graves from genocide that are continuing occurring. I work with the Genocide and Mass Atrocity Prevention Group on campus with this type of research. We're also looking to locate orphaned and abandoned oil and gas wells. There are 35,000 of these in New York State alone. 35,000. If we cap and remove those wells, the methane that they would emit would be like taking off all of the cars from the streets of Buffalo. So it's really important that and an imperative that we do this, because methane is 86 times more potent than CO2 over a 25-year time period. What else are we doing? Other big environmental problems. So we conduct the university deer count in my lab. They're super overpopulated, in case you were wondering. And we try to model Lyme disease. Lyme disease is infecting 300,000 individuals in the Northeast every year. We're trying to stop the invasive hemlock woolly adelgid from decimating hemlock forests, depriving the Northeast of important environmental services. And we're trying to detect, monitor, and predict harmful algal blooms because they cost New York State tens of millions of dollars in losses to tourism, fisheries, and in water treatment costs. So we're doing all this research. We're having a lot of fun. We're engaging students. That's all great, right? But how do we know that we're doing a good job? Is it the student responses? Yay, I liked your class. You would have loved my class because we flew drones in it and because I bring my dog to the lab. You know, like, how do we really measure success? Obviously, we're trying to increase retention, right? Unfortunately, the data is still out on that. This is a relatively new program. And remember, the retention rates are calculated 6 years, okay, by the National Science Foundation. So we're gonna wait on that. Let's talk about some of the success directly for the students, how it's impacted their lives. Awards, local, national, international, external fellowships and scholarships, conference presentations, publications, media recognition, placements. And when I say placements, I mean paid internships. If you're good at something, you should get paid for it, is what I always tell my students. And fully funded master's and PhD programs. So what are the results? Are we successful? I'm gonna let you be the judge, and hopefully you guys talk in the chat about this. Personally, I'm a pretty competitive person, as you could probably tell. I take pride in the geology department here, and I take pride in a little bit of interdepartmental competition within Harper College. So I was really happy in 2019, February of 2019, when Nicholen and Janine, a couple of my students, won the geography department's GIS Day Poster Award competition for the undergraduates. They were actually using a binary logistic regression, so a GLM model, to model and do seismicity in Oklahoma. And not to be outdone, we went on, and then the next year, this last February 2020, right before COVID hit, we won the People's Choice Award with Sophia, Gabe, and Kaylee there. And we won first place with Kelly Young's Harmful Algal Bloom Project. 2 years in a row, winning local awards here in the local geography department GIS Day, first place. As you can see, they like to promote Kelly on the website, and some of my other summer scholar students like Sam Wong. We've now started a really cool agreement with Corning, SUNY Fredonia, SUNY Oneonta to actually study harmful algal blooms. It's really a great collaboration. What about other awards? Well, here's Will Frazier in 2019 winning the Provost Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Research. And as you can see, he's standing next to some of the big wigs of the university. How about 2020? We won the same award. We won the Provost Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Research yet again. It was awesome. They only give 2 of those out a year. So the fact that the geology department is taking it a couple of years in a row, it's great. We've also won international awards. This is the Tech Briefs Create the Future Award for Aerospace and Defense. Alex is going to talk to you a little bit more about this next. And the Chasing Genius Award from National Geographic. Now, those are all fine and good. I like, you know, the little local awards that my students win, and you know, a little bit of the international stuff is cool. But what's really cool is when your students get scholarships and when your students get fellowships, and that helps them out, and that puts them on the trajectory that's going to take them to that next level in their life. So Jasper, for instance, here was a Goldwater Scholar. He was the only one at Binghamton a couple of years ago. He also won the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, which is the most prestigious fellowship on the planet Earth, and has a number of, I can't even count them on all my fingers and toes, Nobel laureates. So the students are doing quite well. How about conferences, you say? We roll pretty deep at conferences. This is just the 2018 AGU, for instance, in Washington, DC, and you could probably tell that it was a good one. Jasper won the David S. Miller Young Scientist Scholarship, which comes with $1,500, which is awesome, but he was also the first undergraduate student ever to win it. All my other students here did awesome. Oh, in fact, over the last 4 years since I've been at Binghamton, 43 of my undergraduate students have presented at multiple national and international conferences, including the American Geophysical Union, like here, the world's largest earth and space science meeting in the world, 30,000 abstracts, the Geological Society of America, the Symposium on the Application of Geophysics and Environmental and Engineering Problems, SCID for American Archaeology. It goes on and on. And I'd really like to take this time to thank Harper Edge and to thank the Undergraduate Research Center, because they have been very generous in helping my students reach these conferences so they can present the results of their research to people in the field. How about publications? Little ones like American Archaeology Magazine here, Jasper's collecting some EMI data, or Frac Tracker. Natalia, who was my first student who went through the FRI program and then became a 4+1 master's student, she wrote a great article here for Frac Tracker about the methane emissions from these orphaned and abandoned oil and gas wells. I'm going to skip through these publications real quick. More or less, we do a lot of humanitarian demining work that Alex is going to talk about, published in Journal of Conventional Weapons Destruction by the State Department, Remote Sensing, Journal of Conventional Weapons Destruction. The media loves this stuff. They pick it up. I mean, you know, we get Der Spiegel, we get, you know, Popular Mechanics, we get Scientific American. And if you pull up the geology department any given day, you'll notice that 3 of the 4 people who are being featured just happen to be my students. But the real thing that matters is placements, right? Are your students getting where they need to go? Our placements have been phenomenal. We've had excellent help here from the university with the Summer Scholar and Artist program. I've had 4 of those the past 4 years. I've had students go with the IRIS internship program, Scripps Institute of Oceanography, Harvard School of Public Health, Sloan Kettering, more National Science Foundation research experiences for undergrads than I can possibly count off the top of my head. MIT Woods Hole for Oceanographic Institution, BAE Systems, Natalia's got a job there. Sam's got a job. Samantha Wong has a job at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Jasper obviously has NSF GRFP, but is also at Lamont Doherty at Columbia University. We have multiple students at Yale, and we've had multiple NASA internships, and now a student who's getting his master's at the Space Science Technology Center, otherwise known as the Department of Atmospheric Sciences at University of Alabama, Huntsville. So our students are doing phenomenal, and the program is thriving, and Alex is going to tell you about a really cool research project we have. But before then, let me say thank you and leave you with a modern class photo. A student taking a photo from a drone with our class mascot, the Lab Labrador Apollo. So I will leave it to Alex now.
Okay, so we'll have Alex Nicholen as our next speaker. He is an assistant professor of geological sciences and environmental studies here at Binghamton University, and in more ways than one is one of our own. In addition to being a faculty member, he is also an alum and earned his undergraduate degree in geological sciences from Binghamton University in 2005. Alex, we turn it over to you.
Thanks, Steve. All right, folks, thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate this chance to present some of our research to you. And I will dive a little bit deeper into one of the projects that I've been involved with the first year research immersion program. Because like Tim mentioned, one of the key elements of this program is there are no sandbox projects. We challenge students to actually deliver on their promise on the promise to change the world that they all put down in their application letters, right? When people submit those letters, they promise to change the world. Now it's time to deliver on that. So here in the geophysics program here, we have something called the Demining Research Initiative. So I'll tell you a little bit about those projects and how our students, our Binghamton students, have helped solve one of the most challenging problems in demining, which is a global crisis. Okay, so landmines, you're probably familiar with them from all the war movies, and sometimes they sneak into the kind of the back of the CNN news article or something. But they have actually become a tremendous problem over the last 100 years. Because when they were developed in the beginning of the 20th century, landmines were basically seen as a defensive weapon. As technology evolved, they became more compact, harder to find, and they became something called the weapon of mass destruction in slow motion. Basically, the mines that are left behind in post-conflict nations continuously prevent those regions from development, both economically, socially. So since this is a continued learning experience, here is the 101 course on metal detection. Essentially, the problem that we're facing is that although mines have evolved, our ability to detect them has not. We are still using the same mine detection techniques that were developed nearly 100 years ago. And this is the person you see on the beach looking for the, the silver dollar, right? They're walking around waving an electromagnetic coil. That coil emits a field, and if that field intersects a metallic object, an eddy current is generated, which then is picked up by the receiver. That changes the tone of the sound that the person's hearing in those headphones. That's called the beep. And once you hear the beep, you start prodding. You take out something sharp or a shovel, and you begin poking the ground, hoping that that process will not actually detonate the mine. Yeah, it's not exactly rocket science. And we've been doing this for the last century. You can see in the pictures here, for World War II, the person is holding the coil and poking the ground. And here is a person in 2019 holding the coil and poking the ground. The problem with this is there are a subset of landmines that were specifically developed to avoid this method of detection. Small antipersonnel plastic landmines. The most famous of these is so-called butterfly landmine. I'm actually holding one in my hand right now. You can see it's about the size of a cell phone. So they're very small. They are made of nearly all plastic. The liquid inside is non-magnetic. The only magnetic piece of that mine is a tiny little fuse well, which basically generates the same exact signature as a small nail or a beer cap. So trying to find these things, even though they're put on the surface, is virtually impossible. You're either forced to over amplify your signal and then spend hours digging through every single little piece of metal shrapnel on the ground, or you just assume that this area is not deminable. And unfortunately, large swaths of places like Afghanistan and Syria are contaminated with these things. So this is the problem we faced. And this is the Inception Phase. We had an idea. In 2017, we, and by we, I mean myself and Tim, sat in the courtyard of the Science One building and pointed an infrared camera at a set of these landmines. And what we realized is that because they're made of plastic, they have a completely different heat signature than the surrounding environment. And this signature changes through time, throughout the course of the day. And then this signature can be used to identify them, because essentially what you're doing is you're subtracting the signature of the mine from the signature of the background. You get these nice hot spots as to where the mines are. Great. So if you know where your landmines are and you have a camera, then you can actually find them. The problem is knowing where they are. And what we realized is that in the last 10 years or so, something amazing has happened. We developed another technology, the low-flying, inexpensive commercial drone technology, which is fully compatible with these highly sensitive infrared cameras. And with the help of the Harper research grant, we connected the two. We put a highly sensitive thermal imaging camera onto a relatively cheap drone. And we flew that drone in a pattern over a simulated field. Right here in Broome County, we've actually worked with the Shenango Valley State Park Commission. We did this in their old rubble yard. And it turns out that with minimal processing, these landmines stood out like sore thumbs. In the thermal imagery, we would see bright spots associated with areas where the mines were present. And the success rate of this method of doing things was 90%. Now, 90% is not 100%, but the important thing is that we don't need to find all the mines. We need to find one mine out of the 18 that are deployed in the pack. Because once we find one, we can narrow down that area and basically declare it hazardous or non-hazardous. And that tremendously helps out the demining organization because now they can prioritize their tasks. And the next 2 weeks, we actually spent on Google Scholar trying to figure out if anybody has figured this out before. And it turns out that no one did. So we started publishing on this. We published in multiple scientific journals, peer-reviewed scientific journals, engineering journals, industry journals, demining journals. And everywhere we published, this was received like a breath of fresh air because this has completely changed the game and continues to change the game of demining. In our last attempt, we actually combined this with computer vision. Basically, now we're letting the computer do the interpretation. And this has really caught the attention of both the media and the NGO community. As Tim mentioned, you know, we were picked up by a number of national and international outlets for this. And our students have received a few awards. I will highlight one of these in the beginning, in the end of my talk. And this is where I want to get to something really important. This is where we were in 2017. We had an idea. In 2018, we had the proof of concept. And at that moment, we were fortunate to have the support of the university and the support of Harper College that provided us with a faculty research grant that really allowed us to basically push it to the next phase without waiting for a big NSF proposal or waiting for a big STEM proposal to go through. We were able to act on our idea faster than anybody else. And it turned out that this was the game changer in this project, because at this point, it was like getting fertilizer to a young tree. From this, we've done 7 peer review articles. We received 3 international awards. We generated 3 graduate fellowships, an NSF grant, an NSF GRFP. And finally, we also got something that's actually priceless. We received recognition from one of the most conservative, in a sense of not letting charlatans in, communities, the demining communities. We are now recognized as a research partner by the HALO Trust, the International Red Cross, and the Geneva Center for Humanitarian Demining. This is, it's hard to express how difficult this is. When we presented this in Basel last year, we were the only university invited to present. So the next time you're in Geneva, stop by the International Red Cross. They will know where you're from. Binghamton's on the map. And to put it in our perspective, when we won the aerospace and defense category in the Create the Future contest, our students who led this team, our 2 BU students, beat out 2 teams from NASA. Yeah, that NASA, the real NASA, okay? So again, this is something where we challenged our students and challenged ourselves to be the best, to solve a problem that had no solution. And the outcome has exceeded all our expectations. And we could not have done this without the support of the university. So we are deeply thankful, and we're very grateful to all of you for being here and kind of hearing us out. And we hope for your continued support, because this is the first of many things that will come out in the next couple of years. So thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
Alex, thank you very much. And Tim, thank you very much. Certainly great to see this project and how it's taken root and grown and developed into something beyond everyone's expectations. And great to see that freshmen are able to participate in the research. Certainly few things I think could get their attention and turn them on to research like drones. And so it's great to see that This is done so well with the help of the research grant and giving great visibility to the university. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. We're very clearly going to go into the bonus time with this tier talk, but if you have questions for Tim and Alex or Elizabeth or Brian, definitely share them in the chat box, and I promise we will get to your questions following the last tier talk coming up, which will be presented by Bryan Kirschen, one of our faculty members and also an alum of Binghamton University. So he's an assistant professor of Spanish and linguistics here at Binghamton. He has received his PhD from UCLA and master's degrees from Stony Brook University, Middlebury College, and here at Binghamton. And he also had earned his undergraduate degree here at Binghamton as well. Bryan's research focuses on sociolinguistics of the Spanish-speaking world with specialization in Judeo-Spanish Ladino. Bryan, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want you to think back to the last time that you checked your mail. No, not your email, but the actual mailbox outside your house or downstairs in your apartment building, and received a handwritten letter from someone, maybe from a friend or a family member. Well, let me start my talk by telling you about a letter, a series of letters that one person, a Binghamton student at the time, received to her campus mailbox. At the start of the millennium, Janine Sadaka, now a speech-language pathologist, would receive handwritten letters from her grandfather, Chaim Vitali Sadaka, who was born and raised in Turkey. Let me read to you a section of one of these letters, this one from 18 years ago. Muy querida Janine, es imposible de poder escribirte mis sentimientos cuando estoy meldando tus letras en Rashi. A tu edad, yo creo que en el mundo no existe otra persona que podrá escribir. Tu caligrafía parece como si fuera que es escritura mía. Puedo decir que es la copia de mi escritura. Tu español, excelente. Yo no sabía que tú puedes expresarte en este judeo español. Tu sensibilidad, tu sonrisa dulce, me hace acordar mi familia Sadaka. Tú sos entera de mi sangre, tu grandpa que te estima mucho. Now, even though I didn't provide you with the translation or even put the words on the screen, I imagine that you said to yourselves, well, that sounds like Spanish. Maybe some of you even understood part or most of what I just read. But now let me show you what this letter looks like. A bit confused? You see, what Janine's grandfather wrote to her in was not the Spanish that most of you are probably familiar with, from either speaking the language yourselves or having studied it at school. This is Judeo-Spanish, often referred to as Ladino. And what you see on the screen is the cursive handwriting written from right to left that people just like Janine's grandfather used for centuries for community correspondence, letters, journals, notes, and ledgers. A quick look at this letter and you might think, well, that looks like Hebrew. But while the script is a variety of the Hebrew alphabet that some of you might even be familiar with today, this cursive writing is not the same. So someone proficient in Hebrew cannot just pick up these letters and begin reading them. Janine's grandfather wrote to her in their secret language from the different places he resided throughout the year, Turkey, Canada, and the United States. And Janine, in return, would reply, writing about Binghamton, her studies, sports, and friends. So let's go back a step. You've probably heard of Yiddish, a language that developed among Ashkenazi Jews, or Jews of Eastern Europe and their descendants, but you might have never heard of Judeo-Spanish, or other Jewish languages for that matter. You see, when the Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492, they settled predominantly through the Ottoman Empire, in cities throughout today's Turkey, Greece, and Bulgaria, for example. These Jews, Sephardic Jews, preserved varieties of Spanish, or what we call Ibero-Romance languages, which they spoke at the time. But the language developed, especially due to contact with neighboring languages like Turkish, Greek, Bulgarian, Arabic, Serbo-Croatian, languages of liturgy like Hebrew and Aramaic, or other Romance languages like Portuguese, Italian, and French, the latter which would be considered a language of prestige among many Sephardim. Judeo-Spanish was the mother tongue of generations of Sephardim, all into the past century. Like most of the world's languages, it's considered endangered. Nearly all speakers of Judeo-Spanish have assimilated to the majority languages of their countries where they've lived for generations, and less than a century ago, tens of thousands were killed during the Holocaust. Utilizing the Ethnologue's expanded graded intergenerational disruption scale, a rubric which measures the vitality of the world's languages, Judeo-Spanish, referred to in this catalog as Ladino, ranges from shifting to nearly extinct, with moribund, level 8A, serving as the average placement for this language. The only remaining active users of the language are members of the grandparent generation and older. And while there are cases of younger speakers, the most proficient speakers of Judeo-Spanish are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that alphabet that you saw before on the screen, Soletreo, or what Janine's grandfather called Rashi, is nearly extinct and undecipherable to nearly any of the remaining speakers of Judeo-Spanish today. There's considerable variation, and of course, the issue of legibility in general based on penmanship. That's why Janine's grandfather was regularly in awe of his granddaughter's ability to respond to him in this style of writing, noting, "At your age, I don't think there's anyone else who can write in such a fashion." So, while most of my research has actually focused on oral production of Judeo-Spanish from speakers throughout the United States, I thought, what if I could create a platform that would allow people to learn Soletreo or help decipher their own letters, which in some cases have been collecting dust in basements and attics for decades. My idea was to take an item as simple as a postcard, like the one you see on the screen, digitize it, and allow for visitors to discover what it says. This photo in writing on the backside is from nearly a century ago from Allegra Amir of Salonika, Greece, and shared with me by Allegra's granddaughter, Joyce Amir Ben-Ezra, who happens to be the mother and mother-in-law of Mark and Lori Ben-Ezra, and grandmother of Rina, Ilana, and Zach Ben-Ezra, all who either went or still go to Binghamton University. So providing the Ladino transcription and English translation could not only allow for the Ben-Ezras to decipher the content of this postcard, but also countless others looking to do the same. Due to the support from the Harper College Faculty Research Grants, I was able to initiate the Documenting Judeo-Spanish project, the first phase, which we launched in April 2020. This particular project sought to digitize, collect, locate, transcribe, and translate content written in Soletreo. It also provided support to work with and train an undergraduate research assistant to help decipher the content of these texts and build an online portal to display our collection. After reaching out to speakers of Judeo-Spanish, their children and grandchildren, and locating items held at different archives, we've been able to collect hundreds of pages of material. Our site, Documenting Judeo-Spanish, for now features just 25 different documents, including letters, plays, poetry, and more, from the 19th century until the present day, and from various cities around the world, including those within the United States. But the vision for our site was not just to simply display documents, but also allow visitors, whether they be students, educators, or community members, to interact with content. So aside from creating keys to decipher the script, users can hover over any word in a document to reveal the Latin character equivalent. Judeo-Spanish is written predominantly in Latin characters today. So material becomes much more accessible to viewers who are likely unable to read the original script. Clicking on any word will reveal its English translation. And apart from digitizing material, we've also been able to create an interface that provides users with an introduction to Judeo-Spanish by means of the Soletreo script as a paleographical tool to upkeep your ability for those looking for additional practice, and with a collection of content that speak to a number of cultural, religious, and historical matters related to Sephardic Jews. We've also created parallel text with transcriptions and translations of all content, which can be downloaded at the bottom of each page. Now, since the time we launched our project, our site has been welcomed by visitors from more than 65 countries, and we continue to get requests to help transcribe and translate letters from around the world. But up until now, our work has been a manual process. Let's take a look at another example. This one from a letter from 1913. After learning that Mr. Isaac Ashkenazi separated from his wife, his friend Jacob Mizrahi sends him a letter with his well wishes, especially as the Jewish New Year approaches. I'll focus in on the highlighted section and read the Ladino, and you can follow along with the English on your screen. Ma te decimos todo lo que hace el Shem Yitbarach es por bien. Tu buen mazal esperas con todo bueno. Tú no te ciclees. El Shem Yitbarach ya tendrá tu buen cargo zechut avod y de tu bondad. Now, when I mentioned that deciphering Judeo-Spanish is a manual process, I mean that there is no computer software available that can simply read, decipher, or translate the content of these letters. This is something that is readily available in a number of other languages and scripts. Just think about automatic translation between languages on your favorite social media page, or optical character recognition, text recognition in a PDF file. That doesn't exist for Judeo-Spanish, and certainly not for this particular script, Soletreo. In fact, let's see what happens when we try to run this very excerpt through Google. This is what it generates. A series of Arabic letters, which for the most part, don't form any actual words. So our next phase for this project is to train our computers to read Soletreo in all its variation. Let me ask you a question. What letter do you see on your screen? The letter A, right? In 8 different fonts. But even with all the variation, there was probably little to no doubt about this letter. Well, the idea is to utilize handwritten text recognition so that our system can similarly identify the following Soletreo characters, which despite variation of either the letter Aleph or Aleph plus Hey, all represent the same sound in this case. My team has already submitted a grant application to a federal agency to support this project, and if we are able to provide our system with enough examples, we hope to use machine learning to essentially create software that can read through this script and thousands upon thousands of pages that are waiting to be deciphered. And while this ambitious project will take considerable time, input, and trial and error, it would facilitate what is up until now an entirely manual process that is all but limited to a very few people able to read through such material. Such software could have a major impact, not only for scholars working in archives, but also Sephardic communities where histories and voices are waiting to be told. This is Sephardic studies. But Sephardic studies at Binghamton University is actually nothing new. In the early 1990s, international conferences were held right here on campus, bringing together scholars from across disciplines to present their research. And just starting this year, I'll be working with my colleague, Professor Dina Danon of Judaic Studies and History, on a new initiative, the Ladino Collaboratory, sponsored by the Institute for Advanced Studies in the Humanities and its Public Humanities program. Through the Ladino Lab, we'll be working with students and alumni on a number of language-related projects, including training in the language. We'll also be creating language apprenticeships for our students, pairing them with speakers of the language throughout the academic year in an effort for students to apply their knowledge, speakers to share their language, and most importantly, to connect campus and community. We look forward to continue Binghamton University's decades-long leadership and scholarship within the field of Sephardic studies, as we continue to innovate and educate our students in the years to come, sharing our work with alumni, speech communities, and all those interested in this growing field. Thank you.
Bryan, thank you very much for a fascinating talk about the blending of different languages and some ways that we're trying to understand how we communicate, and we look forward to seeing how things result. from this effort. So time now for questions and answers. And Bryan, we'll keep you up on the screen because there are two questions that came your way through the chat. The first one is, are there books that you would recommend about Sephardim and Judeo-Spanish?
Yes, many. A lot of great work has been done in the field of history. A lot of great work has also been done in my field of linguistics. I would, and there are also textbooks out there to even learn how to speak Judeo-Spanish. For anyone interested in recommendations based on your interests, I would definitely recommend you to email me, kirschen@binghamton.edu, and I'd be happy to send you a list of resources.
And the next question, Bryan, for you is, do you know Walt Wolfram, sociolinguistic scholar at North Carolina State University, who does dialect studies?
Yes, of course, a very important figure in our field, certainly. And, even though I research Judeo-Spanish, Judeo-Spanish is an endangered language like most other languages I mentioned in my talk. So really, we can learn from each other as scholars and even as speech communities.
Thank you very much. So the next question that we have is directed at Elizabeth. And the question is, have you read Greenwood? Let me pull you onto the spotlight right here. There we go.
Great, thank you, Steve. And I just want to say it is so wonderful to hear my colleagues speak and learn about their work. No, I have not read that book. I've not read Greenwood, but I'm going to look it up.
Elizabeth, thank you. Our next question is for Tim or Alex. This question is, mines are a problem in Cambodia also, aren't they?
Yes, actually, I answered that in the chat, but I will answer it for everyone. So they're a huge problem in Cambodia. They're the problem in Cambodia, and we're actually working directly with the main demining NGO in Cambodia, Golden West, to develop a new generation automated
Robo-snake.
system.
Say it, Robo-snake.
So the idea is that instead of using a drone, you use kind of one of those bionic robots developed kind of like, think Boston Dynamics, but instead of things with feet, think of a snake. And the idea is that the snake bot will go under the canopy and do surveys prior to actual demining efforts, because believe it or not, in Cambodia, because of the dense vegetation, 80% of the cost of demining goes to brush clearance. So it's kind of a remarkable situation there. So it's a very specific problem for a solution for a very specific problem that we're working on. But yeah, we are actually working with them directly.
Yeah, one of our students was supposed to be there this summer, but obviously COVID put the kibosh on that. So we actually did a bunch of field trials here on campus with simulated minefields. And so there are actual TM62 mines and TM14 mines. Obviously, they are inert, but they're here on campus, and we've been using a bunch of remote sensing methods to detect them. So yeah, so hopefully Sophia will be ready to go demine Cambodia next summer.
Yep.
Tim and Alex, thank you very much. The next question is for Elizabeth. And the question is, how do you determine which of the activists that you're going to interview when putting your play together?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for that question. I sent out a wide net of all the different contacts I had, and one contact led to another, led to another, led to another. And that helped me in reaching particular activists, but I was particularly interested in activists who were fighting deforestation and working as tree sitters. So that was my focus. And that led me to the activists that I spoke to.
Thank you very much. Our next question is for Bryan. I'll pull you up on the screen. So the question is, are alumni able to apply or request to be involved with the Ladino studies work or Ladino certification programs?
Yes, yeah, we're looking for ways to connect with not only students, but also alumni. So if you're interested in learning some Ladino and getting involved, I saw my email address was in the chat. Please send me an email and I'm happy to provide you with the information.
Thank you very much. There are no more questions. I think we've gone through everything. So before we wrap it up, I just wanted to toss to Marilyn Gasca. We're so thrilled you got the camera to work. Technology is great when it works. I know you have a few things you'd like to say just to help us wrap up this event tonight.
Right. So just don't go from a Microsoft Teams meeting to Zoom is the lesson learned there. But I think everybody would agree that all of these were really transdisciplinary talks that's expanded well beyond Harper to bring in technology, STEM, using even with the languages, being able to translate the text. So I'm really impressed as a Watson School person how great all the applications were from everything from aerospace and defense, and how great the undergrads were doing. And Elizabeth, your efforts are inspirational, also working across Harper with psychology, et cetera, with all the things you're doing. So congratulations to everybody for all that work. We appreciate all of the talks today. They'll be online for if you want to tell people about it, to get the word out for lifelong learning. And we do encourage you to follow up with the faculty members and get engaged and spread the word for all of this great work that's helping the Binghamton reputation internationally. So thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Marilyn, thank you very much. And before we close it out tonight, I just want to say thank you to all four presenters. You were fabulous. And I feel like I came away from this with more of an appreciation of the great work happening across our campus with respect to research, and all of these talks were just fascinating. So thank you very much. And I'm sure our alumni enjoyed it as well. In fact, I've been reading the chat box here and there, and I know you've been getting some props from members of the audience. So thank you for your participation. And we couldn't have a tier talk without you. And we couldn't have a tier talk without those of you in the audience. So thank you. I know we ran overtime a little bit, but most of you stayed with us. And for that, we're very, very grateful. So although Tier Talks is wrapping up, homecoming week is not over. So just to quickly go over for the schedule for the next couple of days. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock is the Bold Bearcats of the Last Decade 10 Under 10 award ceremony. And then we also have the trivia game show tomorrow night. On Saturday, we wrap up the virtual 5K. So get out there for a run or walk before Saturday at 5 and get your times sent in. It should be a nice couple days for a workout, I hope. The mixology demo is happening at 5 o'clock on Saturday, followed by the Netflix watch party, and then homecoming wraps up on Sunday morning with the video with a very special tribute of the Harper College 70th anniversary. So tune into as many homecoming events as you can between now and Sunday afternoon, and we're certainly grateful that you're with us here today. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great evening.